Breathe with me, just for a moment. You've heard Gina's pain already, and maybe you feel that familiar ache in your chest, or the sting behind your eyes, or a kind of numbness, as if the world has dimmed around you. I want you to know that whatever rises up for you as you listen, grief, anger, longing, confusion, even emptiness, all of it is welcome here. You don't have to push it away. You don't have to explain yourself. You are safe exactly as you are, exactly where you are. Let's keep going, side by side. Gina was born on a cloudy September morning, the kind where the world feels quiet and the light slips through windows in soft stripes. Her mother used to say she came into the world with her eyes wide open, as if she knew from the start she'd have to keep watch. Gina's earliest memories aren't playgrounds or laughter, but the faces of adults, searching them for signs, trying to predict the weather in their eyes. If she heard her father's boots on the stairs, she'd stop breathing for a second, listening. Was it a good night, or was a storm coming? Was the air going to crack open, or was she safe to smile? The house was always neat. Her mother's voice was soft, quieter still when she apologized, for the mess, for the noise, for herself. Her little brother Sam never seemed to notice the tension, but Gina always did. She learned young, be good, and good means quiet. Be helpful, never ask for more. At school, Gina would flinch if a teacher's voice got sharp. At sleepovers, she'd lie awake, listening for shouting that never came. Her friends never noticed. They didn't know why she hated sudden noises, or why, when they played hide-and-seek, she'd always find the darkest, tightest space to disappear into. Hiding felt like safety. Sometimes, she could go so still, she'd forget she was there at all. She remembers her 10th birthday, the vanilla cake her mother baked, the way every kid in the room kept glancing at the door, waiting for Gina's dad to show up. He arrived late, loud, holding gifts and hugging her too tightly, as if making up for lost time. She smiled for the camera. She didn't dare cry. After everyone left, her father yelled at her mother about the mess, about money, about the cake being too dry. Gina stood in the hallway, wishing she could disappear, wishing she could erase the day, erase herself. That night, in her journal, she drew a door with a giant lock. She wrote, "Home is where the lock is." When you grow up believing that love is unpredictable, you learn to accept almost anything to keep it. Unpredictability becomes normal. If you've never felt safe, you don't know what safety feels like. You chase the approval of people who can't give it, or you believe love is just the absence of yelling. So many survivors carry that blueprint. It's written into their bones. And it's not their fault. It was never their fault. It was survival. Gina went to college and chose psychology, hoping she could figure people out. She made friends, but never deeply. She was always the listener, always absorbing other people's pain, never sharing her own. Her romantic relationships were careful, short, never close enough to threaten her sense of self, never close enough to be truly seen. She apologized constantly for everything and nothing. She worked at a bookstore. She found comfort in quiet shelves and strangers who asked nothing of her. If she forgot to text her mother back, guilt twisted in her stomach for days. If a boss frowned at her, she replayed it for weeks, sure she'd ruined everything. One night in her dorm, she wrote, "Why does everything feel so heavy? I'm always waiting for something bad to happen. Maybe if I stay invisible, nothing can hurt me. Or maybe if I'm not careful, I'll disappear altogether." Gina met Daniel when she was 27, stacking books near closing. He was funny, attentive, almost too charming. He asked about her favorite stories, her dreams, her family. He listened like nobody ever had. He told her she was beautiful, but it felt less like a line and more like a discovery. He told her about his own loneliness, his own fear of being abandoned. Within weeks, they were inseparable. He sent flowers to her apartment, made her playlists, planned spontaneous trips. He texted all day, every day, with words like, I finally found you, and I've never felt like this before. Gina felt like she'd stepped into someone else's life, a better version, one where she was wanted, chosen, safe. But even in those early days, there were cracks. Daniel didn't like her friends, said they were bad for her, said her family was toxic. He was jealous, always questioning her about where she went, who she saw, who she texted. He joked that she read too much. He called her too sensitive if she didn't laugh at his teasing. He started fights and then cried, told her he needed her, that only she could make him feel whole. She started to see her friends less and less. He didn't forbid her outright. He just made it so difficult, so uncomfortable, that she stopped trying. He'd text her nonstop if she went out. He'd sulk if she didn't answer fast enough. He made her feel guilty for wanting time alone, for reading, for painting, for dreaming. If she tried to set a boundary, he called her selfish or cold. Sometimes he cried, sometimes he raged. Always, she ended up apologizing, even when she couldn't remember what she'd done wrong. She stopped painting. She stopped singing. Her world shrank down to the size of their apartment and Daniel's moods. One night, Gina went out to dinner with her friend Maddie. Daniel insisted she go, said he didn't want to be controlling. But her phone buzzed every few minutes. Where are you? Who's there? Why aren't you answering? Don't you care about me? When she got home, Daniel was waiting. He didn't shout. He just stared at her with cold, hurt eyes until she cried. Then he held her and whispered, I just need you, Gina. I need to know you love me. This is how the cycle works. First, tension. Then, the explosion. Then, the reconciliation, when he's sorry, when he says he'll change, when he swears it's the last time. And then, the calm, the hope. Every cycle binds you a little tighter. The good times feel like reward. You start to believe that if you could just be good enough, it would end. Daniel's words became a maze. If Gina remembered an argument differently, Daniel would say, You're imagining things. I never said that. Why are you being dramatic? If she found texts or evidence of lies, he'd say, You're crazy. You need help. You're paranoid. He'd hide her keys, then help her look for them, telling her she was forgetful. He'd apologize for things he never did, and then accuse her of twisting the truth when she brought up real hurts. She started doubting her own mind. She started keeping a secret notebook, writing down what happened each day, trying to prove she wasn't losing her grip on reality. One entry read, Am I really this forgetful? Did he really say that, or did I imagine it? Sometimes I feel like I'm trapped in a hall of mirrors. Nothing is solid. I want to trust myself. Why can't I? There were days when Daniel was gentle, attentive, almost the man she fell for at the beginning. On those days, Gina would almost forget the pain, tell herself it was over, that he was trying. She clung to those moments, desperate for the warmth. That is trauma bonding. When the same person who wounds you is also the only one who soothes you. When pain and relief come from the same source. You crave the reconciliation. You will betray yourself to keep the peace. You will stay, even when you know you are dying inside. Trauma bonds aren't weakness. They're the brain's way of surviving. When love is inconsistent, your mind clings to the good and ignores the bad, so you don't shatter. Gina's cousin Lila had grown up with her, and she knew the pattern, first with Gina's father, now with Daniel. One day, Lila dropped by the apartment, found Gina alone, saw the wilted plants, the unopened mail, the brushes covered in dust. She asked, Are you okay, G? Gina wanted to lie, but her voice broke. She cried, raw, ugly sobs, like something inside her was breaking open. Lila didn't push. She just sat with her, holding her hand, saying, You matter. I see you. You are not lost. Before Lila left, she wrote a note and stuck it to the fridge. You are not alone. I am here, when you're ready. Gina read it every day. Later, in her journal, Gina wrote, "Lila looked at me and saw everything I'm trying to hide. She said I'm still in there somewhere. I want to believe her. I want to come back to myself. Is that possible?" The shift didn't come all at once. It was slow, like sunrise through fog. A morning when Gina realized she hadn't laughed in months. A night when Daniel accused her of cheating, with nothing but suspicion in his eyes. The moment she noticed her own body recoiling from his touch. She started reading, watching videos, learning words. Narcissistic abuse, gaslighting, trauma bonding. She found an online group, posted her story anonymously, desperate for answers. The replies came, "This is abuse. You are not alone. You are not crazy." Gina started to believe it. She started setting aside cash. She found a therapist and booked an appointment, didn't tell Daniel. She planned. She waited. The fog lifted, just a little. Waking up is terrifying. It means facing not just the truth about the abuser, but the truth about your own life. The years you lost, the pain you endured, the pieces of yourself you can't find anymore. But waking up is also the bravest thing you can do. For Gina, it was the first time she whispered, "This is abuse," even if she only said it to herself. She started making lists, what to take, where to go, who to call. She hid a bag at Lila's, passport, cash, spare phone, keys. She told her therapist her plan. She rehearsed the goodbye in her head. One night, Daniel exploded, accused her of plotting against him, punched a hole in the wall, then cried and begged forgiveness. That night, Gina slept in her clothes, shoes by the door. When he left for work the next morning, Gina took her bag, her journal, her trembling hands, and walked out. She never looked back. She collapsed in Lila's arms, sobbed until she had nothing left. Lila wrapped her in blankets, made tea, called the therapist. They locked the door. For the first time in years, Gina slept without fear. People say, "Why didn't she just leave?" They don't understand that leaving is the most dangerous time. Abusers escalate when they feel control slipping. Survivors have to be careful, strategic, supported. Leaving isn't failure, it's heroism. Gina thought leaving would be the hardest part, but it was only the beginning. Daniel did not let go. He texted and called, filling her phone with a storm of words, sometimes begging her to come back, promising to change, sometimes threatening, sometimes accusing her of things she'd never done. He told her friends she was unstable. He told her family she was lying. He spun stories so well that Gina sometimes doubted her own memory, wondered if maybe, somehow, she had made it all up. He weaponized the law, filed for custody of their dog, told anyone who would listen that she was the abuser, that she was crazy, that she was out to ruin his life. Court felt like another kind of prison. Gina had to prove her own pain to strangers who looked bored, or skeptical, or sometimes kind, but always distant. She collected evidence, texts, journal entries, emails, everything that might help her reclaim her own story. She wrote down every threat, every apology, every twist in the conversation. There were days when she wondered if freedom was worth this new kind of fear. The world seemed made of mirrors, every surface showing her the version of herself Daniel wanted others to see, invisible, unstable, broken. But she kept going, even when her hands shook in the courtroom, even when Daniel smirked at her across the aisle, confident in his performance, even when the judge didn't seem to see her at all. She kept showing up. Every time she spoke her truth, even if her voice wavered, the fog inside her retreated, little by little. Gina found herself jumping at loud voices, flinching at footsteps in the hall, checking locks twice before bed. Some nights, she woke gasping from nightmares, certain that Daniel was right outside the door. Other nights, she lay awake, blank, too exhausted to cry. She started seeing her therapist twice a week, started writing again, joined a support group for women who knew what it meant to be hunted by your own memories. The group was mostly women, a few men, all of them carrying invisible scars. In that room, Gina learned words she'd never known before: coercive control, complex trauma, recovery. Each woman spoke her pain in pieces, and together they built something like hope. One of the hardest things was letting herself feel angry. She'd spent her life swallowing rage, believing it was dangerous, that it would make her like him. But her therapist said, "Anger is not destruction. Anger is a sign that your boundaries matter." It took months before Gina could believe that. There were days when she relapsed into guilt, believing Daniel's voice over her own. There were days when she wished she could disappear, become smoke, float away from all of it. But those days became less frequent, and on better days, she felt something new and terrifying: possibility. She found comfort in small things: a steaming mug of tea, a walk in the cold air, the way her cousin Lila never pressed, only listened. She started to notice birds again, the soft yellow of flowers in cracks on the sidewalk, the weight of sunlight on her skin. She wrote in her journal, "Today I made coffee just for me. I sat in the sun and felt warmth. For so long I thought I was broken. Now I know. I am healing. My voice is mine. My life is mine. I am allowed to be happy." For a while, Gina stayed close to home. Crowds made her anxious. Sudden noises made her freeze, but she kept practicing. Some days she called Lila and just breathed with her on the phone, not speaking, not explaining, just sharing space. Some days she listened to music and let herself cry. Some days she felt nothing at all. Healing was not a straight line. Sometimes she missed Daniel, not the real Daniel, but the man she thought she'd loved, the version who made her laugh, who called her beautiful, who made her feel chosen, even if it was only ever a performance. Her therapist told her this was normal, that trauma bonds are strong, that the brain will try to pull you back to what's familiar, even when it hurts. Gina started to forgive herself for the time she lost, for all the times she stayed, for all the times she tried to save someone who did not want to be saved. Sometimes she wrote letters to her younger self. She wrote, "You did your best. You deserved safety. You deserved kindness. It was never your fault." Little by little, she rebuilt a life. She got a new job, part-time at first, then more hours as her confidence grew. She made new friends, slow and careful friendships, with people who asked nothing from her but her presence. She started painting again, her hands shaky at first, afraid to make mistakes. The first thing she painted was a window, cracked open, light streaming in. She met other survivors, some in person, some online. They shared stories, traded tips for bad days, reminded each other to eat, to rest, to trust themselves, even when it felt impossible. One morning, Gina woke up and realized she was not afraid to open the curtains. She let the sun into her small apartment and stood barefoot on the kitchen tile, feeling the world settle under her feet. She realized she was still here. She was alive. There were still hard days. Grief for what she'd lost, for the girl she used to be, for the time she couldn't get back. But even the grief felt cleaner now, like rain that sweeps the dust away. She learned to let it come, and then let it go. Lila brought her wildflowers every Sunday. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they didn't. They watched bad movies, made popcorn, laughed until their sides hurt. Gina started to see herself in Lila's eyes, not as broken, but as brave. Months passed, and the panic attacks became less frequent. She started to walk with her head up again. She found herself singing in the shower, softly at first, then louder, without shame. For a while she avoided dating. She was afraid she'd repeat the pattern, afraid her wounds would choose for her. But slowly, she learned to trust her own instincts, to listen for red flags, to walk away at the first sign of danger. She started to believe that love could be gentle, that it could feel like sunlight, not like fog or drowning or broken glass. She wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose next. The legal battles dragged on longer than she expected, but little by little, the world started to believe her story. She got to keep her dog. She got to keep her peace. One night, months after leaving, she dreamed of a locked door. In the dream, she reached out, turned the handle, and found that it was open. On the other side, the air was warm. She stepped through, and for the first time, she ran. When she woke up, she cried, not from fear, but from relief. If you are listening to this and any part of you recognizes yourself in Gina's story, I want you to know, you are not alone. You are not broken. You are not crazy. You are not to blame. You are brave for surviving. You are brave for waking up. And you are allowed to want more than survival. You are allowed to want joy. Maybe you are still in the fog, or maybe you are standing by a locked door, unsure if it's safe to open. Maybe you are just beginning to believe your own memories. Maybe you are already on the other side. Wherever you are, there is a lineage of survivors who walk beside you. People who have built new lives out of ruins. People who see your pain, who know your courage, who will never ask you to shrink yourself to fit their comfort. If you need help, reach out. If you need to rest, rest. If you need to start again, you can. There is life after abuse. There is light after fog. There is hope after heartbreak. You are worthy of love that feels like safety, like warmth, like freedom. You are worthy of a life that belongs to you. Thank you for listening to Gina's story. Thank you for staying with your own heart. Be gentle with yourself. You are worth every bit of the healing you seek. Time passed, as it does. Some things got easier. Some days, Gina barely thought of Daniel at all. Other days, a sound, a laugh, a scent, a certain kind of silence would drop her right back into the old terror, the feeling of glass beneath her feet, the weight of eyes she couldn't see. But she kept going. She learned to expect those days, not to blame herself for them. She learned to say, I'm safe now. That was then. This is now. There was no dramatic finish line, no parade, no bright line between broken and healed. Instead, there was the slow, honest work of building a life. Gina got a new apartment, just hers. She painted the walls in soft, warm colors, peach and cream and blue. She filled it with thrift store mugs and battered books and the wildflowers Lila brought her. She bought a heavy, solid lock for her door. But after a while, she realized she didn't check it 3 times before bed anymore. She didn't jump at every step in the hallway. She adopted a second dog, a shy mutt from the shelter, thin and trembling and quiet. She named her Hope. Together, they learned to be gentle, to move slowly, to trust small joys. One morning, sitting on her tiny balcony with Hope asleep in her lap, Gina felt the sun on her skin and realized she was humming. She didn't recognize the tune, but it didn't matter. She let it fill the air, soft and free. She started volunteering at a women's center. At first, she only helped with paperwork, sorting donations, making tea. But the women who came through the doors, some with bruises, some with empty hands, some with eyes that never looked up, recognized something in her. They asked her to listen, to sit with them in their confusion, to hold silence with them when the words were too hard. Gina told her story in pieces, always careful, always gentle. She never said, "You have to leave." She said, "You are not alone." She said, "You are not crazy." She said, "It's not your fault." Sometimes, when a woman was ready, Gina would sit with her as she made her plan, the same way Lila had sat with her. She'd help gather papers, pack bags, map routes, breathe together in the darkness before dawn. She'd watch the way they walked out the door. Scared, yes, but also fierce. Gina never told them what healing would look like. She knew it would be different for everyone. She kept her own boundaries, too. When the stories got too heavy, she'd go home and light a candle, take Hope for a walk, call Lila, let herself rest. She learned slowly that compassion for others could not come at the expense of herself. She kept writing too, not just in her journal but in letters she never sent, poems she never read aloud, paint on canvas when words weren't enough. Her art grew bolder, stranger, brighter. Her therapist encouraged her to show her work, and Gina found the courage to hang a few pieces at the Women's Center. People noticed, the way the colors seemed to break through darkness, the way every window she painted was open, every mirror was cracked but never shattered. One day, a woman came up to her and said, "Your painting feels like the inside of my chest. Broken, but light still gets in." Gina smiled, thanked her, and for a moment, felt something like pride. Her friendships deepened, slow and honest. She could say no and mean it. She could ask for help and not feel ashamed. Her relationship with Lila grew into something sacred. Two women who had seen each other's shadows and chosen to stay close, no matter what. They laughed harder than ever, grieved together when old wounds ached, celebrated every small victory. Gina's mother called more often. Sometimes they spoke of the past, sometimes they didn't. Her mother apologized quietly for the things she couldn't protect Gina from. Gina didn't absolve her, but she didn't hate her either. They both learned to give space to grief. One spring, Gina met someone new. It was nothing like before. There was no lightning, no grand gestures, no storm of attention. Just a gentle unfolding, a shared meal, an honest question, a hand held in silence. She took it slow. She watched for red flags, trusted her body's signals, gave herself permission to leave at any moment. This time, love felt different. It felt like laughter in the kitchen, like steady breathing, like trust that didn't need to be proven every day. She learned that safety could be quiet, could be kind, could be the absence of fear. She wrote in her journal, "I am allowed to love, and I am allowed to walk away. I am allowed to choose myself, always." Some days, she still woke up in a sweat, heart pounding, caught in old dreams. Some days, she doubted herself, wondered if she'd ever really be free. But those days were fewer, and she knew how to care for herself when they came. She became an advocate in ways big and small. She spoke at a panel for survivors, shaking as she took the mic, but steady in her truth. She helped write safety plans, organized fundraisers, made art that spoke for those still trapped in silence. She never called herself a hero. But in the quiet moments, she let herself feel proud. Years after her escape, Gina stood by the ocean, letting the waves pull at her feet, and realized she was no longer afraid of the tide. She knew the fog could come back, but she trusted herself to find her way through. If you're listening to this and you're still in it, still waiting for the light to break through, Gina wants you to know, there is nothing wrong with you. You are not weak for loving, for hoping, for trying to save someone else. You are not broken because you stayed, and you are not cruel because you left. You have survived things others cannot even name. You have learned to walk on broken glass and call it home. But there is another life waiting for you, one where you do not have to be small or silent or afraid. Reach out. Trust yourself, even if your voice shakes. There are people who will believe you, people who will help you, people who see you as you are. Brave, resilient, worthy. Gina's story is not a tragedy. It is a map, a lantern, a testament to the possibility of healing. She is not just a survivor. She is a breaker of cycles, a maker of new patterns, a builder of safe places. Maybe you are too. You are not alone. You are not invisible. You are not to blame. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to hope. You are allowed to choose yourself. Thank you for listening to Gina's story. Thank you for trusting your own story, even the parts that are still too raw to name. Be gentle with yourself. Let yourself breathe. Let yourself hope. You are worth every bit of the healing you seek, and I'll be right here, holding this space, until you're ready to begin again.